Being a weekend cop reporter is not the most glamorous job in journalism, but it might be the easiest. All you have to do is check into the newsroom, grab a portable scanner, go out and get some breakfast, go down to the cop shop, ask a few questions. Hey, any volcanoes, natural disasters, plane crashes, mass murderers? No, not today, Colin. Pretty slow around here. Check the police blotter, go out and get something to eat. Maybe right after lunch, nice leisurely lunch, you write a little story about a car accident, and you call your buddies up, the other reporters, and you make some plans for some after-work libations. You know, the other cop reporter that I knew in Colorado Springs, I think I was, the only time I worked cops, weekend cops, I was filling in for him. He was like my big buddy there, kind of the only guy who would hang out with me, to tell you the truth. But, so we'd go out. And I was on the front page a lot there. And so we go out, and he was a cop reporter. He didn't want to do that. He wanted to do more. So he kept saying, Colin, how do I do this? Colin, how do I do that? So I would tell him, he of course, but he wanted to do this one story. So he ignored everything I said. He had one story he wanted to work on. It was about a family that was burned by a water heater accident and recovered heroically. Well, I thought that was kind of sappy, and I thought it took a certain kind of person to carry that kind of story off. Didn't have any reason to think he was that kind of reporter. Anyway, so he totally ignored what I said, and he did his story, and a few months later, we shared an award for the top news story in the paper for that quarter. He won for his story about the burned water, the water heater victims. I did a story about pregnant women in prison. Anyway, luckily that guy, his name's Dave Curtin, luckily Dave did ignore my counsel on how to write news stories or feature stories, because he wrote the story on his own time. They wouldn't give him the time to do it, wrote the story on his own time. That story won the Pulitzer Prize. So any of you trolls want to hassle me, you can hassle me about that I tried to kill a Pulitzer Prize winning story. Anyway, let's get back to the real purpose of this video. My big experience with being a cop reporter was in Colorado Springs. And your first, after the weekend cops, that is. So I didn't do it that often, but the first time I did it, the very first time they send you out, they go, listen, there's only one rule. You always have to keep your scanner on. I think every newspaper has their own horror story, but this is the one they told me, that a couple years before I was there, one of the cop reporters takes his portable scanner out, you know, for listening to the different police frequencies. And he takes his scanner out and he goes to play basketball and he turns it off. Next day, the owner of the newspaper goes into his driveway, picks up the newspaper, and he wants to know why the largest train crash in the history of Colorado Springs has not been reported in his newspaper. So that's the only way I can explain or imagine what happened to all the cop reporters in San Francisco on Saturday night at 9:30 p.m. when 60 black people rampaged through a BART train, harassing, beating, robbing, taunting, and laughing, always laughing. So today I started getting all these emails from the San Francisco area, from viewers of this channel, from a couple of cops, saying, Colin, did you hear about this thing happen on Saturday night in San Francisco? Large group of black people rampaged through a BART train, robbing, beating, harassing, threatening, laughing, always laughing. I said Saturday night at 9:30. I started hearing about it Monday around noon. That's like, 36 hours after it happened. I mean, how did that happen? I mean, there's a lot of newspapers in that area. How many TV stations are in San Francisco, Oakland, that whole area? They all have cop reporters that work on weekends. Their only job is to listen to the scanners. Some places they put the scanner right in the newsroom, so everybody's listening to it. And if you don't know how a scanner works, you just dial in a few emergency frequencies for cop, fire, ambulance, whatever, and they just kind of keeps rotating through. So anytime a conversation pops up, you'll hear it. So if somebody's getting murdered, or if 60 black people are rampaging through a BART train, you're going to at least get a tip that something's going on, that you can hop in your car and go out there and figure it out. None of it didn't happen. Nobody knew anything for 36 hours. Wow. Okay, so the details are not That's startling, really. But let me just read a few of them from the news from the local, the San Francisco Chronicle, just to get you guys the who, what, when, where, and how. Most of it. Witnesses said 40 to 60 juveniles flooded the station, jumped the fare gates, and rushed to the second-story train platform. Some of the robbers apparently held open the doors of a Dublin-bound train car while others streamed inside, confronting and robbing, and in some cases, beating riders. The juveniles committed multiple strong-arm robberies of bags and cell phones, said a police summary after the incident. At least 2 victims suffered head facial injuries requiring medical attention. Of course, not one media outlet of the dozens of outlets in that area reported on the central organizing feature of the violence. Everybody involved in the attack was black. The San Francisco Chronicle, of course, if the BART police their stations as well as the San Francisco Chronicle policed their comments and kept all the comments out suggesting this is a black thing, boy, BART would be the safest train system in America. But, in the BART comments, of course, the readers were pretty sure what was going on. One guy said it was Trump. Another guy said it was income inequality. And my favorite one was the commenter who said, hey, what kind of idiot brings valuables on the BART train anyway? It's their fault, not BART's fault. Even a cursory examination of police reports and news reports shows that the BART train is, is kind of ground zero for this black violence on wheels and official denial in abundance. Lots and lots of stories all the time in the local papers about violence on the BART. And the overwhelming majority of the people committing the violence are black. Oh, by the way, and of course, when there's a movie out like Fruitvale Station, you remember that? That's a station really close to this one that we just talked about. That was a story about how black people in Oakland on the BART are constantly being beat up and killed by racist white cops for no reason whatsoever. That movie was huge. It was pretty huge in all the local media, too. But forget the movie for a minute. I mean, do you guys remember that story from 2 years ago? We did 2 years ago. It was about an app on the BART in Oakland. So BART knew they had a problem with crime on their system. So what they did was they started giving people encouraging people to use an app. I think it was called BART Watch, where if you saw some argy-bargy, see something, say something, boom, boom, boom. Well, it turns out that an overwhelming majority of the complaints registered with the app were against black people, which kind of matches the percentage of crimes committed on the BART system against the commuters. One of the local newspapers in the Bay Area had a conniption. I did a story on it. Why don't we run that story just to kind of remind us what we're dealing with? If you use a train or a subway or a bus, and you go to one of these stations, one of the first things you see are lots and lots of signs urging you, if you see something, say something. Well, these signs should have little asterisks on them. If you see something, say something, asterisk, unless the person happens to be black. I think that's what the newspaper in East Bay of San Francisco would like to see happen. It's called the East Bay Express. They just did a story about an app, a racist app, created by the Bay Area Rapid Transit. That's the ubiquitous light rail system out there in San Francisco area, the whole Bay, San Francisco, Oakland, Berkeley, Richmond, the whole deal. And they just did a story where how last couple months ago, BART, Bay Area Rapid Transit, they created an app. So if you see a crime, you just open up your app. You don't have to write anything. You basically just check something, right? It's like, boom, I see somebody being rowdy. I see somebody sleeping. I see somebody doing this, that, the other. Boom. Then if you want, you can put a description in, pop it off, boom. Hopefully the cops will come along and save the day. Well, that doesn't happen either, but that's what happened. So anyway, the East Bay Express, they grabbed a month worth of these complaints under a Freedom of Information Act request. They got about 750 or so complaints, and of those, about a quarter of them listed the race of the person. So of all the ones that listed the race, the complaints were like 60 against black people. 60% of the complaints were against black people, even though black people only make up 10% of the ridership. So it's back to the same old dilemma, right, that we talk about here all the time. Either one, the people at BART are a bunch of racists who are accusing black people of crime and suspicious behavior for no reason whatsoever, or black people are responsible for the crime, mayhem, violence, and all sorts of other bad stuff 6 times greater than their percentage of riders on BART. The liberals out in the Bay Area have no doubt about what it is. Here's one person says, with somebody called the Ella Baker Center. The Ella Baker, I don't know what the Ella Baker Center is, and I'm not going to look it up. But I'm just going to take a guess, okay? I don't really like to guess on this channel, but I don't like to waste my time either. The Ella Baker Center sounds like somebody was on their deathbed, so the liberal showed up and said, "Hey, can you put us in your will? We'll name it the Ella Baker Center." And the person said, "Okay." Boom. Next thing you know, you have a nice little trust fund, paying these, kicking off a couple $100,000 a year for the Ella Baker Center. Anyway, here's what the executive director, Zachary Norris, says about the system, the situation on BART. Society conspires to marginalize people. With this app, you see the criminalization of poverty and racial profiling put all together. So they kind of just work through some examples and blah, blah, blah. I mean, if one thing we see on this channel hundreds of times, and in my books and in all of my articles, is that violent crime and mayhem on buses, on subways, public transit, public spaces in this country is a black thing. Violent crime in Oakland is a black thing. Richmond is a black thing. Even in Berkeley. I was talking to somebody the other day about the comparison between Berkeley and the University of Wisconsin in Madison. Exactly the same kind of town, exactly the same kind of demographics, exactly the same kind of nasty black on white crime that all the liberals who run the town like to ignore, deny, condone, excuse, encourage, and even lie about. I'm thinking of a video from Madison a few months ago where a person, this white couple was the victim of a really nasty bit of home invasion violence. Put the camera in front of him. The lady, the first thing out of her mouth is she says, "Oh, we still love Madison. We still think it's a great place to live." Parentheses, even though black on white crime is wildly out of proportion there. Just the way, Berkeley's the same way. That's part of the BART system, right? If you ever go to Berkeley, if you talk to people, I get a lot of readers in Berkeley, a lot of people on Berkeley on this channel. And if you go to Berkeley and talk to people out there, Berkeley's close to Oakland and Richmond, and the people in Berkeley are such soft targets. So anyway, everybody up there is convinced that there's a racist app where racist white people, of course, in the comment section, the racist white people are going, "Hey, I just want to get home without being panhandled, without being harassed, without being threatened, the way it happens on BART frequently." Other people were saying, "Yeah, I quit riding BART because it was just too unpleasant, and the prospect of this kind of harassment and threats of violence just didn't want to go through it anymore." Does this racist app, does it ring a bell to any of you guys? Any of you guys remember us doing something like this before? Yes, like just a couple months ago. Georgetown, Washington, D.C., same thing. This is an upscale shopping area. The residents of the shopkeepers in Georgetown, we've done a lot of stories in Georgetown about, flash mobs going into Georgetown, cleaning off the shelves, running out the door, everybody laughing with they run out the door with jeans, armful of jeans that cost a couple $100 a pair, where you go in and steal a purse, a couple $1,000s for a purse, that kind of thing, all on video. Well, the shopkeepers in Georgetown got an app where they saw some suspicious characters, air quotes, roll by. They would just, put a little message out to each other saying, hey, be on the lookout because there's some nasty people that we think have been around here before, committing crimes here before. Well, the Washington Post got a hold of the app. All of a sudden, it was like, oh yeah, everybody on the app, identified in the app as being suspicious or accused of criminal behavior, was black. So again, we're left with one of two choices. One, all the shopkeepers are a bunch of racists and they're accusing black people of criminal behavior for no reason whatsoever. Or two, criminal behavior in Georgetown is wildly out of proportion and committed by black people. This is Washington, D.C., the chocolate city of Washington, D.C. And Washington, D.C. is an interesting place to write about racial violence because, A, there's a lot of it, a lot of black on white crime, not just in Georgetown, but in the neighborhoods where all these federal bureaucrats live. They're all making 100, 120, 150 grand a year. They have, two bureaucrats live in the same house. So a $300,000 household, nice little house, and they're all down with the program. The program being that black people are relentless victims of relentless white racism all the time, everywhere. That explains everything, especially why cops are always picking on black people for no reason whatsoever in places like Washington, D.C. And in case anybody else needs a reminder of how much black people are relentless victims of relentless white racism all the time, everywhere, that explains everything, especially why people like me are always picking on black people when they rampage through BART trains, beating the hell out of the commuters. Well, how could we, we're not going to do any better than this clip from Jesse Williams.
This award, this is not for me. This is for the real organizers all over the country, the activists, the civil rights attorneys, the struggling parents, the families, the teachers, the students that are realizing that a system built to divide and impoverish and destroy us cannot stand if we do. All right? It's kind of basic mathematics. The more we learn about who we are and how we got here, the more we will mobilize. Now, this is also in particular for the black women, in particular, who have spent their lifetimes dedicated to nurturing everyone before themselves. We can and will do better for you. Now, what we've been doing is looking at the data, and we know that police somehow manage to de-escalate, disarm, and not kill white people every day. So what's going to happen is we are going to have equal rights and justice in our own country, or we will restructure their function and ours. Now, I got more, y'all. Yesterday would have been young Tamir Rice's 14th birthday. So I don't want to hear any more about how far we've come when paid public servants can pull a drive-by on a 12-year-old playing alone in a park in broad daylight, killing him on television and then going home to make a sandwich. Tell Rakia Boyd how it's so much better to live in 2012 than it is to live in 1612 or 1712. Tell that to Eric Garner. Tell that to Sandra Bland. Tell that to Dorian Hunt.
That was actor Jesse Williams of Grey's Anatomy. He accepted the Humanitarian of the Year award at the BET Awards last night. Williams paid homage to the unsung heroes in the fight against racism and also spoke out against police violence. Many people were moved by the speech, including Justin Timberlake, who tweeted out a series of messages that some say were out of line. First, JT tweeted at Jesse Williams, though, #inspired. It was his response to one Twitter user that got the most criticism, though. Timberlake tweeted, "Oh, you sweet soul, the more you realize that we are the same, the more we can have a conversation." But then posted this, "I forget this forum sometimes. I was truly inspired by Jesse Williams' speech because I really do feel that we are all one, a human race." And following that tweet up with, "I apologize to anyone that felt I was out of turn. I have nothing but love for you and all of us."
If you go back and look through the last week or two of videos on this channel, you'll see there's an enormous amount of black mob violence. Not maybe as dramatic as this, but there's a lot of stuff going on. We just did a video of it the other day, a long one, where I just stretched them all out and said, hey, what's up with this? Why are all these things happening? No, I didn't ask that. I said, listen, these are all these things that are happening, but the real question we ask is, how long can it be before reporters are simply unable to connect the dots and tell us that we have a problem with black criminality wildly out of proportion in this country, and reporters and public officials are in denial, deceit, and delusion about it? And I think the answer might be, well, they're just going to stay doing what they're doing as long as their number one goal is not making the black kids angry.